When Michaela Jenkins creates a revolutionary water filter that wins the National Science Fair, she thinks her dreams of attending MIT are finally within reach. But even with the prize money and partial scholarship, she's still $20,000 short. As the deposit deadline approaches and hope fades, Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton unexpectedly appears at her school, having seen her viral interview. What follows will change not just Michaela's future, but communities around the world, for reasons neither of them yet fully understand. Michaela Jenkins wiped her sweaty palms on her jeans for the 10th time. The bright lights of the National Science Fair stage in Washington, D.C. made her feel like she was melting. 5 student finalists stood in a row, waiting. Michaela's heart pounded so hard, she was sure the microphones could pick it up. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself. In the crowd, her mom Tanya sat on the edge of her seat. Next to her was Mr. Rodriguez, Michaela's science teacher who had believed in her from day one. They had saved for months and used their last dollars for bus tickets to get here. Tanya's waitress uniform was stuffed in her backpack. She'd have to change in the bus station bathroom for her night shift tomorrow. On stage, Dr. Lenora Harris, the head judge, stepped up to the microphone. Her white lab coat seemed to glow under the lights. These 5 young scientists represent the brightest minds of their generation, Dr. Harris said. Each project shows incredible innovation and potential to change our world. Michaela glanced at her competitors. To her left stood Tyler from California with his artificial intelligence project, and Emma from Massachusetts with her plastic-eating bacteria. To her right were Jamal from Georgia with his solar energy storage system, and Olivia from Oregon with her earthquake prediction model. And then there was Michaela from Southside Chicago with her lead-filtering water system made from materials anyone could find at a hardware store for under $30. Our second runner-up is Jamal Washington from Atlanta. Applause filled the hall as Jamal accepted his bronze medal and $1,000 prize. Our first runner-up is Emma Chen from Boston. More applause as Emma received her silver medal and $2,500 prize. Michaela's knees felt weak. Only 3 left. Dr. Harris paused for effect, holding the gold envelope. And the National Science Fair champion, receiving a gold medal, $5,000 prize, and partial scholarship to the university of their choice is... The silence stretched forever. Michaela Jenkins from Chicago, Illinois, for her innovative low-cost water filtration system. The room exploded with cheers. Michaela froze, not sure. She had heard correctly until Tyler gave her a congratulatory nudge. She stepped forward in a daze. In the audience, Tanya leapt to her feet, screaming and clapping. Mr. Rodriguez hugged her, both of them in tears. "That's my student," he kept shouting. Dr. Harris placed the gold medal around Michaela's neck. It felt heavier than she expected. "Michaela, would you like to say a few words?" Dr. Harris asked, guiding her to the microphone. Michaela stared at the crowd, her mind blank. Then she spotted her mom's face. Tanya was crying and smiling at the same time. Michaela's voice cracked. She took a deep breath and started again. "I built this filter because of what happened in Flint, Michigan. People shouldn't get sick from their tap water just because they're poor. Clean water should be a right for everyone, not a luxury." She clutched the medal. "My mom works double shifts so I can have science equipment. My teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, stays late after school to help me run tests. This award belongs to them, too. Thank you for believing my idea matters." The applause was deafening. Camera flashes popped everywhere. After group photos, Michaela finally broke free and ran to her mom, who scooped her into a tight hug. "You did it, baby. You really did it," Tanya kept saying, rocking her daughter back and forth. Mr. Rodriguez beamed with pride. "I knew it from the first time you stayed after class asking questions about the water cycle. I knew you were special." Reporters surrounded them, asking questions about her project and her future plans. Michaela found herself saying, "I've been accepted to MIT for their environmental engineering program," before she could stop herself. She hadn't told her mom yet. The acceptance letter had arrived last week. But what was the point when they couldn't afford it? Later that night, in their cramped budget motel room on the outskirts of D.C., the celebration faded. Michaela sat cross-legged on one of the twin beds, her laptop open, while Tanya counted their remaining cash. "So the bus back is $87 for both of us. That leaves us with $43 for food until payday," Tanya said. Michaela nodded, typing numbers into a spreadsheet. "Mom, can we talk about college?" Tanya sat beside her daughter. "Of course, baby. I'm so proud of you." "I got into MIT," Michaela said quietly, turning her laptop to show the acceptance letter. Tanya gasped, hugging her again. "Oh my God! MIT! My baby's going to MIT!" Michaela bit her lip. "The partial scholarship from the science fair is $10,000, and I qualify for some financial aid. But," together, they looked at the numbers on the screen. "MIT first-year costs: $76,150 science fair scholarship, $10,000 federal aid estimate, $15,000 other scholarships, $31,000 total still needed, $20,000, Tanya whispered, the joy draining from her face. "Even if I picked up more shifts." "It's okay, Mom," Michaela said quickly. "I can start at community college and transfer later." "No." Tanya took Michaela's hands. Her fingers were rough from years of carrying trays and scrubbing tables. "We'll figure it out. I'll talk to the bank again. Maybe your grandma can help. You've worked too hard to give up now." Michaela nodded, but they both knew the truth. Her grandma lived on Social Security. The bank had already denied them twice for loans. "We should get some sleep," Michaela said. "The bus leaves early." Later, after her mom was asleep, Michaela slipped into the bathroom with her medal. She sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the gold-plated disc, national champion. She should be thrilled. Instead, she felt hollow. She pulled out her phone and looked at photos of MIT's campus, the grand domes, the cutting-edge labs she'd read about for years. She'd imagined herself there so many times, working alongside brilliant professors, developing her filter into something that could help communities around the world. "It was a nice dream," she whispered to herself. The bathroom's fluorescent light flickered, casting strange shadows. Michaela wiped away a tear before it could fall. She wouldn't cry. Champions didn't cry. Tomorrow they'd go back to Chicago. Back to their apartment where the ceiling leaked when it rained. Back to Carter G. Woodson High School, where the lab equipment was 20 years old. Back to reality. She tucked the medal into its case and took a deep breath. "We'll figure it out," she repeated her mom's words, wanting to believe them. But as she crawled back into bed, the $20,000 gap loomed like a canyon between her and her dreams. Wide, deep, and seemingly impossible to cross. But as she crawled back into bed, the $20,000 gap loomed like a canyon between her and her dreams. Wide, deep, and seemingly impossible to cross. 3 days later, the morning bell rang at Carter G. Woodson High School. Michaela walked through the metal detectors, her science fair medal hidden in her backpack. She hadn't planned to bring it, but her mom had insisted. "Own your victory," Tanya had said that morning, pressing the medal case into Michaela's hands before rushing off to her breakfast shift. The school hallways looked the same as when she'd left. Chipped paint, flickering lights, and the lingering smell of floor cleaner. But something was different. People were staring at her. "There she is!" someone shouted. Suddenly, Michaela was surrounded by students and teachers, all talking at once. "Is it true you won nationals? Did you really get into MIT? Can I see your medal?" Principal Watson appeared, parting the crowd with his deep voice. "Let her breathe, everyone. Ms. Jenkins, my office after homeroom. The local news is here to interview you." Michaela nodded, stunned by the attention. Her best friend Zoe grabbed her arm and pulled her toward their lockers. "Girl, you're famous," Zoe squealed. "You're all over social media. Someone posted a video of your speech," Michaela groaned. "Please tell me I didn't look stupid." "Are you kidding? You were amazing. But why didn't you tell me about MIT?" Before Michaela could answer, the warning bell rang. They hurried to homeroom, where even more students wanted to talk to her. During her free period, Michaela hid in the bathroom, checking her email on her phone. She'd sent out applications for every scholarship she could find. No responses yet. The MIT deposit deadline was exactly 2 weeks away. The bathroom door swung open. Zoe walked in, hands on her hips. "What are you doing hiding in here? There's literally an assembly about you happening right now." "I'm checking for scholarships," Michaela admitted. "We still can't afford MIT." Zoe's excitement faded. "How much do you need?" "20,000. Just for the first year," Zoe whistled. "That's rough, but you'll figure it out. You always do." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Michaela smiled for photos with the mayor, answered questions from reporters, and accepted congratulations from teachers who had barely noticed her before. By the final bell, her face hurt from fake smiling. Mr. Rodriguez found her collecting books from her locker. "Quite a day for my star student," he said. "How are you holding up?" "I'm tired of pretending." "Everything's perfect," Michaela admitted. "Everyone assumes I'm going to MIT now." Mr. Rodriguez leaned against the lockers. "I talked to some university connections. There might be additional STEM scholarships you qualify for. Don't give up yet." "Thanks," Michaela said, though hope felt dangerous now. That night, after dinner, Michaela spread her homework across the kitchen table, while her brother Dion played video games in the living room. Their apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with water, stains on the ceiling, but it was home. Instead of doing her calculus, Michaela pulled out her filter designs. The prototype sat nearby, a clear tube filled with layers of activated charcoal, sand, and special clay she'd modified. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Tests showed it removed 97% of lead from water. She made notes on improvements, wondering if she could patent it someday. Maybe then she could afford college. But patents cost money too. Money they didn't have. A stack of envelopes caught her eye. Tanya had left them on the counter after checking the mail. Michaela flipped through them. Bills, advertisements, and 3 large envelopes with scholarship logos. Her heart raced as she opened them, hope rising. Then crashed as she read each one. "We regret to inform you. While your application was impressive, unfortunately, due to limited funds, rejection." All 3. She spread the financial aid documents across the table. Loan applications were stamped insufficient income or no cosigner available. Even with her perfect GPA and national award, doors kept closing. Tanya came home late from her second shift, feet dragging. Michaela quickly gathered up the rejection letters, but not fast enough. "More no's?" Tanya asked, slumping into a chair. Michaela nodded. "It's okay. I'm applying for more. I talked to my manager about picking up extra shifts," Tanya said. And I called Aunt Regina again. Mom, you're already working 60 hours a week. I'd work 100 if it got you to MIT, Tanya said fiercely. You deserve this chance. Later, after everyone was asleep, Michaela worked on her filter at the kitchen table. The apartment quiet except for the distant sounds of sirens and music from neighboring buildings. She'd done the math. Even if her mom worked every waking hour, even if they sold everything they owned, they wouldn't make the deadline. Maybe in a year, she thought. She could work too, save up. But deep down, she knew many scholarships were only for incoming freshmen. Waiting might mean losing it all. Her eyes grew heavy as midnight passed. She rested her head on her arms, just for a moment. That's where Tanya found her in the morning, asleep at the table surrounded by scholarship rejections, loan denials, and her science project, the champion with a dream, but no way to make it come true. That's where Tanya found her in the morning, asleep at the table surrounded by scholarship rejections, loan denials, and her science project, the champion with a dream, but no way to make it come true. Michaela, baby, wake up. Tanya gently shook her daughter's shoulder. You'll be late for school. Michaela lifted her head. A rejected application form stuck to her cheek. What time is it? 7:30. Go wash up. I made breakfast. While Michaela brushed her teeth, Tanya gathered the rejection letters, tucking them away in a kitchen drawer already stuffed with bills. She wouldn't let Michaela see her own tears. At breakfast, Dion chatted excitedly between bites of cereal. Jamal says there's a news van outside school. Is it for you again, Kayla? Michaela shrugged, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate. Probably not. But Dion was right. As they approached the school, a white news van with Channel 8 painted on the side was parked at the curb. A man with a camera stood beside it, talking to a reporter in a neat blue suit. That's Darius Williams, Dion whispered. He does the evening news. Mom watches him every night. The reporter looked up as they approached. Michaela Jenkins? Michaela nodded, suddenly self-conscious about her worn backpack and second-hand clothes. I'm Darius Williams, Channel 8 News. He extended his hand. We're doing a segment on Chicago success stories. Would you mind if we interviewed you about your science fair win? Now, Michaela asked, glancing at the school. We cleared it with Principal Watson. He's giving you a pass from morning classes. An hour later, Michaela sat nervously in a classroom that the news crew had rearranged. Lights pointed at her while Darius asked questions about her project. So what inspired you to create this water filter? Darius asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. The Flint water crisis, Michaela explained, warming to the topic. All those kids getting sick from lead in their tap water. And it wasn't just Flint. There are neighborhoods right here in Chicago with lead pipes. Like yours? Michaela nodded. We have to let the water run for 5 minutes before we use it. But many families can't afford to waste water like that, or buy filters or bottled water. So you created an affordable solution. That was the goal. My filter costs under $30 to make and lasts 6 months. It removes 97% of lead and other heavy metals. Darius held up the clear tube with its layers of materials. This could help thousands of families. Do you hope to develop it further? I'd love to. I've been accepted to MIT's Environmental Engineering program. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That's impressive. When do you start? Michaela's smile faltered. I'm still figuring that out. Darius noticed her hesitation. Is there a problem? She hadn't planned to share this on television, but something about Darius's kind eyes made her answer honestly. Even with scholarships and financial aid, I'm still $20,000 short for the first year. She swallowed hard. We just can't afford it. So what will you do instead? Probably Chicago Community College. It's a good school, she added quickly. I can transfer later, maybe. Darius frowned slightly. Let me get this straight. You won the National Science Fair. You created a potentially life-saving device. You got accepted to one of the top engineering schools in the world. But you can't go because of money? Put that way, it sounded even more unfair. Michaela just nodded, blinking back tears. The camera zoomed in as her voice cracked. I got into MIT, but I can't afford to go. Later that afternoon, the segment aired on Channel 8's Evening News. Darius introduced Michaela as a South Side success story facing a common barrier. The 5-minute piece showed her small bedroom workshop, the wall of science ribbons, and Michaela demonstrating how her filter worked. But it was those final 10 seconds, Michaela's voice breaking as she admitted she couldn't afford MIT, that caught people's attention. By dinner time, Michaela's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The clip had been shared thousands of times on social media. "You've gone viral!" Zoe texted with a dozen exclamation points. Principal Watson called to say the school district superintendent wanted to meet her. Mr. Rodriguez forwarded emails from local businesses offering small donations. Someone started a GoFundMe page titled "Send Michaela to MIT." Within hours, it had raised $1,200. "This is amazing," Tanya said, watching the donation count rise on Michaela's phone. "At this rate, we might actually make it." For the first time in weeks, Michaela allowed herself to hope. She stayed up late responding to messages and thank you notes. The local alderman's office called, promising to help find additional funding. But after the initial excitement, the donations slowed. People shared the story, but didn't always give money. By the end of the week, the total had reached $2,800. After another week, it stalled at $3,200 16 days after the interview. With the MIT deposit deadline just 5 days away, Michaela sat in Mr. Rodriguez's classroom after school. "I think we have to be realistic," she said quietly, looking at the spreadsheet on her laptop. "Even with the GoFundMe money, we're still almost $17,000 short." Mr. Rodriguez sighed. "I've contacted every organization I know. The timing is the problem. Most scholarship deadlines for this fall have already passed." Michaela closed her laptop. "I've looked at Chicago Community College. They have a decent engineering program, and I can live at home." "You should be at MIT," Mr. Rodriguez said firmly. "Your filter design shows graduate-level thinking. You need professors who can challenge you. Maybe in 2 years, after I save up." Michaela forced a smile. It's not the end of the world. That night, she filled out the community college application online. The website looked so plain compared to MIT's elegant page with its photographs of student laboratories and research centers. The application fee was only $25, which made her both relieved and sad. In the living room, Dion was watching Formula One highlights on TV. The colorful race cars zoomed around a track, while an announcer spoke excitedly about the upcoming Miami Grand Prix. "Did you know Lewis Hamilton grew up poor like us?" Dion said, not looking away from the screen. "His dad worked 3 jobs so Lewis could race go-karts." "Yeah?" Michaela wasn't really listening. She clicked Submit on her application, then closed the laptop. "And now he's the greatest driver ever," Dion continued. 7 world championships. He never gave up. "Some of us don't have a choice," Michaela said, more sharply than she intended. She didn't know that at that very moment, 4,000 miles away, that same Lewis Hamilton was about to see her story. She didn't know that, at that very moment, 4,000 miles away, that same Lewis Hamilton was about to see her story. Lewis Hamilton stretched out on the king-sized bed in his Miami hotel suite. The qualifying session for the Miami Grand Prix had gone well, P2 on the grid for tomorrow's race. Not pole position, but a good spot to fight for a win. He scrolled through social media on his phone, trying to wind down. Racing always left him with too much energy, his mind still calculating braking points and racing lines, hours after he'd stepped out of the car. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Lewis called. Marcus, his personal assistant, entered with a tablet in hand. "Sorry to bother you, but Angela from Mission 44 just sent this over. She thought you'd want to see it right away." Lewis sat up, instantly alert. Mission 44 was his foundation, named after his racing number and created to support underrepresented young people in STEM education and careers. He'd started it using millions of his own money, determined to change the system that put barriers in front of kids like him. Marcus handed him the tablet. On screen was a video clip titled "National Science Fair Winner Can't Afford College." The thumbnail showed a black teenage girl in a simple classroom, holding what looked like a clear tube with layers of materials inside. Lewis tapped play. The clip was short, just under 2 minutes, showing highlights from a local news segment. The girl, Michaela Jenkins, explained her water filter system with such clarity and passion that Lewis found himself nodding along. Then came the moment that had made the video go viral, the reporter asking about MIT and Michaela's voice breaking, as she admitted she couldn't afford to go despite winning the National Science Fair. "Play it again," Lewis said quietly. He watched a second time, noticing different details. The worn backpack at Michaela's feet, the science fair medal she wore, reluctantly, as if not quite believing she deserved it. The way her eyes lit up when she explained how her filter worked. Something about her reminded him of himself at that age. The determination, the focus, the refusal to accept that certain doors weren't meant for people like them. "Where is she from?" Lewis asked. "Southside Chicago," Marcus replied. Angela included some background. Single mom, younger brother. The mom works 2 waitressing jobs. Michaela's maintained a 4.0 GPA while developing this water filter. Apparently, it was inspired by the Flint water crisis. Lewis stood up and walked to the window. Miami's lights sparkled below, wealth and privilege on full display. He thought about his own journey, growing up in Stevenage, England, a working-class town where Formula One dreams seemed impossible. His father, Anthony, had worked 3 jobs to support Lewis's early racing career: computer salesman by day, dishwasher at night with odd jobs on weekends. They'd lived on beans on toast some weeks to afford cart tires. Even now, 20 years and 7 world championships later, Lewis hadn't forgotten that feeling of barriers everywhere. "What does Mission think?" Lewis asked. Angela says the ET Girls Project has real potential. The filter design is innovative, simple, but effective. Could help communities like Flint, Michigan, and many others with contaminated water. Lewis nodded. "And the money situation?" "She needs about $20,000 to cover the first year at MIT, even after scholarships and financial aid. There's a GoFundMe, but it's only raised around $3,200. Lewis shook his head. It wasn't a large sum to him, less than the cost of one of his watches. But for Michaela, it was an impassable wall between her and her future. "Do we have contact information for her school? Or that reporter?" "Angela's already reached out to both," Marcus said. "The school principal is eager to help. The reporter, Darius Williams is keeping it quiet to avoid a media circus. Lewis paced the room, mind racing faster than his Mercedes on the track. I want to meet her. Meet her? Marcus looked surprised. Lewis's schedule during race weekends was tightly packed with team meetings, media obligations, and race preparation. Yes, not just send money. That's the easy part. Lewis stopped pacing, decision made. I want to meet her, see the project in person. The race is on Sunday, Marcus reminded him. Monday you're supposed to fly to New York for the Met Gala. I'll go to Chicago first. Arrange it with Angela. Keep it quiet, no press, until we decide if and how we want to announce anything. Marcus made notes on his tablet. What exactly are you thinking? Lewis sat back down on the bed, energy now focused on this new mission. Mission 44 should offer her a full scholarship, but not just money for tuition, the full package. Living expenses, books, everything she needs to succeed. He thought for a moment. And summer internships at Mercedes F1, their engineering department, would be perfect for her water filtration work. That's substantial support, Marcus said. She's a national science fair champion who can't afford college, Lewis replied. That's exactly who Mission 44 was created to help. Lewis picked up the tablet again, looking at the frozen image of Michaela explaining her water filter. He remembered being 14, watching Formula One on a small TV in their modest home, telling his father, "That will be me someday." Most people had laughed. His father hadn't. In Michaela's eyes, Lewis saw that same certainty, the knowledge that she belonged in places others said she didn't. Make it happen, Lewis told Marcus. Tell Angela I want a complete plan by morning. I'll review it before qualifying. After Marcus left, Lewis searched for more information about Michaela Jenkins. There wasn't much, just the news segment and social media posts about her win. No fancy website or professional photos, unlike many science fair competitors with resources and connections. Raw talent, Lewis murmured to himself. Just needs a chance. He sent a quick text to Angela. Whatever it takes, let's change this girl's life. Then he closed his eyes, mind still racing. Not with tomorrow's Grand Prix strategy, but with plans to help a young scientist from Chicago cross the finish line to her dreams. Then he closed his eyes, mind still racing. Not with tomorrow's Grand Prix strategy, but with plans to help a young scientist from Chicago cross the finish line to her dreams. Friday afternoon at Carter G. Woodson High School dragged on endlessly. Michaela stared at the clock in her chemistry class, watching the minute hand tick slowly toward the weekend. 3 days left until the MIT deposit deadline. She'd already accepted it wasn't happening. The classroom phone rang. Mrs. Patel answered it, then looked directly at Michaela. Ms. Jenkins, you're wanted in the principal's office. A few students whispered and giggled. Michaela gathered her books, wondering what this was about. More paperwork for her community college application, probably. As she walked down the empty hallway, she noticed something odd. The usual noise from classrooms was missing. Many rooms she passed had students pressed against the windows, peering into the hallway. Some had their phones out. When she turned the corner toward the main office, she saw something even stranger. 2 large men in dark suits standing outside the principal's door. They looked like Secret Service agents from the movies, complete, with earpieces. One of them spoke quietly into his wrist as she approached. Subject approaching. Michaela slowed down, suddenly nervous. I'm Michaela Jenkins. Principal Watson sent for me? The men nodded, and one opened the door for her. Inside, Mr. Rodriguez waited in the outer office, looking both excited and stunned. There you are, he said, his voice higher than normal. There's someone who wants to meet you. Who? Michaela asked, completely confused. Mr. Rodriguez just shook his head, as if he couldn't find the words. He guided her toward Principal Watson's private office and knocked. "Come in," Principal Watson called. Mr. Rodriguez opened the door and gently pushed Michaela forward. She stepped into the office and froze. Sitting casually in a chair across from Principal Watson's desk was a man Michaela recognized instantly. Dark skin, braided hair pulled back, dressed in colorful clothes that probably cost more than her mom's monthly rent. A chunky watch gleamed on his wrist. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time Formula One world champion. The greatest driver in the sport's history, in her principal's office, looking directly at her. Michaela's mouth opened, but no words came out. She blinked hard, certain she was hallucinating. Lewis stood up and smiled. He was shorter in person than she expected, but his presence filled the room. "Michaela Jenkins," he said in his British accent. "I hear you've built something amazing." Michaela remained frozen. Behind her, she heard the click of a camera. Principal Watson's secretary snapping a photo of her stunned face. "I think she's in shock," Mr. Rodriguez whispered to Principal Watson. Lewis stepped forward and extended his hand. "I'm Lewis Hamilton. It's a pleasure to meet you." Automatically, Michaela shook his hand. Her brain finally caught up with reality. "You're Lewis Hamilton," she stated, then immediately wanted to kick herself. Of course, he knew who he was. Lewis laughed warmly. "Last time I checked, yes. Why are you here?" The question came out before she could think better of it. Instead of being offended, Lewis seemed to appreciate her directness. "I saw your interview about the water filter you designed. I'd love to hear more about it." Principal Watson stood up, straightening his tie nervously. "Mr. Hamilton has asked to see your project, Michaela. I suggested the science lab would be the best place." "Yes, of course," Michaela said, still dazed. She looked down at her worn jeans and simple t-shirt. If she'd known Lewis Hamilton was coming, she would have worn, well, anything else. As if reading her thoughts, Lewis glanced down at his own colorful outfit and winked. "I came straight from the airport. No time to change." They walked through the halls, now lined with students and teachers pretending they had reasons to be there. Whispers followed them like a wave. "Is that really him? Why is Lewis Hamilton at our school? Did you get a picture?" Dion appeared from nowhere, eyes wide as saucers. "Lewis! Mr. Hamilton! Sir, I'm your biggest fan!" Michaela wanted to disappear through the floor. "Dion, you're supposed to be in class." Lewis didn't seem to mind. He stopped and smiled at her brother. "What's your name, mate?" "Dion Jenkins. I'm Michaela's brother. I watch every race, even the ones at like 3 a.m. I have your poster on my wall and everything." "Proper fan, then," Lewis said, looking impressed. He pulled a small notepad from his pocket, scribbled something, and handed the paper to Dion. "Maybe I'll see you later." Dion looked at the autograph like it was made of gold. A teacher quickly ushered him back to class, though he kept looking over his shoulder in disbelief. They continued to the science lab, which Mr. Rodriguez had unlocked. The room was empty, sunlight streaming through dusty windows. Michaela's water filter prototype sat on a back table where she'd left it after her last testing session. "Is this it?" Lewis asked, approaching the clear tube with its layers of materials. Michaela nodded, suddenly self-conscious about how simple it looked. "It's just a prototype. The final version would be more professional." Lewis picked it up carefully, examining the construction. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most brilliant. "Can you walk me through how it works?" Nervousness gave way to passion as Michaela explained her design. The top layer is activated charcoal, which removes organic contaminants. Below that is a layer of modified clay that I treated to attract heavy metal ions. That's the key innovation. The sand layer at the bottom catches any remaining particles. Lewis listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about flow rate and filtration capacity. His genuine interest helped Michaela relax. "How long does each filter last?" he asked. "About 6 months for a family of 4, depending on usage. The clay layer can be regenerated by soaking it in salt water overnight, which releases the captured lead. Then it can be reused." "Brilliant," Lewis said, and he truly seemed to mean it. "And it costs less than $30 to make?" $27.43 with current materials prices, Michaela specified, but mass production would bring that down further. Lewis set the filter down gently. "You know, this reminds me of something." "What?" "When I was about your age, I was the only black kid in my kart racing club. People didn't expect much from me. They thought I didn't belong there." Michaela nodded, understanding exactly what Kai meant. "But that just made me work harder," Lewis continued. "I'd stay later, study the tracks more carefully, push myself beyond what everyone else was doing." "Did it help?" Lewis smiled. 7 world championships later, I'd say so. Mr. Rodriguez and Principal Watson had retreated to the doorway, giving them space to talk. Lewis leaned against the lab table, suddenly serious. "I've been where you are, Michaela. Not exactly the same situation, but I know what it's like to have a dream that seems impossible, to face barriers that have nothing to do with your talent or work ethic." Michaela looked down at her filter, then back at Lewis. "Why are you really here?" "Because when I saw your interview, I recognized something in you. The same drive I had, the same refusal to accept limitations. But you mentioned MIT in your interview. Is that still the plan?" Michaela's chest tightened. "The deposit is due Monday. We're still about $17,000 short, so..." She shrugged, trying to appear casual. "I'll be attending Chicago Community College instead. It's a good school." Lewis studied her face. "And you're okay with that?" "Does it matter? Not everyone gets to follow their dreams." She tried to sound brave, matter-of-fact. Lewis shook his head, a small smile playing at his lips. "Not yet," he corrected. "Not everyone gets to follow their dreams yet." Before Michaela could ask what he meant, Lewis glanced at his watch. "I have a proposition for you and your family. How would you like to come to the Miami Grand Prix this weekend?" Before Michaela could ask what he meant, Lewis glanced at his watch. "I have a proposition for you and your family. How would you like to come to the Miami Grand Prix this weekend?" Michaela stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "This weekend? In Miami?" Lewis nodded. "My foundation, Mission 44, would arrange everything. Flights, hotel, VIP passes to the race, you, your mom, your brother." "But my mom works weekends," Michaela said automatically. "Both jobs. We can talk to her employers. Or perhaps another guardian could accompany you." Mr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "I'd be happy to chaperone if Ms. Jenkins can't make it. Michaela's mother knows me well." Lewis smiled. "Perfect. We'll sort out the details." He turned back to Michaela. "So, what do you say?" 1,000 thoughts raced through Michaela's mind. This was insane. People like her didn't get whisked off to Formula One races by celebrities. And yet, here was Lewis Hamilton, waiting for her answer. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why me? Why all this?" Lewis's expression turned serious. "Walk with me?" He gestured toward the door. They stepped into the empty hallway, the security team keeping a respectful distance behind them. The final bell had rung, and students were now in their last classes of the day. Mission 44 supports young people from underrepresented backgrounds in STEM fields, Lewis explained as they walked slowly down the corridor. We provide scholarships, mentoring, resources. Your story caught our attention because you're exactly the kind of student we aim to help. But there must be thousands of students like me, Michaela said. There are, and we help as many as we can. But your water filter project. Lewis paused at a trophy case, glancing at the faded sports medals inside. That's something special, something with real potential to help communities. They continued walking, passing empty classrooms and bulletin boards covered in school announcements. When I was 13, Lewis said, my dad and I were watching Formula One on our little TV. I told him, that will be me someday. My dad worked 3 jobs so I could race go-karts. We had nothing. Some days we lived on just beans on toast. Michaela listened, trying to reconcile this story with the global superstar walking beside her. Racing is an incredibly expensive sport, Lewis continued. Even more than college. We couldn't afford it, not really. But my dad refused to give up. He believed in me when no one else did. You were lucky to have him, Michaela said softly, thinking of her own mom working double shifts at the diner. Lewis nodded. I was, but it wasn't just luck. He made sacrifices, but I had to deliver results. I worked harder than anyone. I had to be twice as good to get half the recognition. I know that feeling, Michaela admitted. They reached a window overlooking the school's rundown basketball court. Outside, the Chicago skyline rose in the distance, gleaming towers a world away from this neighborhood. The Flint water crisis, Lewis said, changing topics. That's what inspired your filter, right? Yes. I saw a documentary about it when I was 14. All those children getting sick from lead in their tap water. Their parents spending what little money they had on bottled water just to brush their teeth safely. And it made you angry, Lewis observed. It did. But being angry doesn't fix anything. I wanted to actually do something. So you tested 27 versions of your filter? Michaela looked at him in surprise. How did you know that? I do my research, Lewis said with a small smile. Tell me about those 27 versions. For the next few minutes, Michaela explained the evolution of her filter design. The clay composition she'd modified after reading academic papers. The failed versions that clogged too quickly or didn't capture enough contaminants. The breakthrough when she adjusted the pH balance. Lewis listened intently, asking technical questions that showed he genuinely understood the science. Michaela found herself forgetting who she was talking to, simply enjoying discussing her project with someone who got it. Version 23 actually worked better than the current one for lead specifically, she explained. But it was less effective for other contaminants. I had to find the right balance. That's engineering, Lewis said. Always compromises and trade-offs. They circled back toward the science lab, where Mr. Rodriguez was waiting patiently. Why MIT? Lewis asked. There are good schools closer to home. Their environmental engineering program is the best in the country, and they have a water quality research lab that's doing groundbreaking work with filtration systems similar to mine. Michaela hesitated, then added, plus, they believed in me enough to accept me. But not enough to make it financially possible, Lewis noted. Michaela shrugged. That's how the system works. It's a broken system. Maybe. But complaining won't change it. Lewis smiled at that. No, it won't. Action changes things. He stopped walking and turned to face her directly. You said earlier that not everyone gets to follow their dreams. I've spent my career And now my foundation work proving that wrong. It's different for people like you, Lewis challenged. From neighborhoods like this, with families like yours? Michaela didn't answer. I won my first world championship. In 2008, Lewis continued. Know how many black F1 champions there had been before me? 0. In the entire history of the sport. People said it couldn't be done, that someone like me didn't belong in Formula One. He glanced out the window again. Now, I'm the most successful driver in history. But I didn't get there alone. I had people who believed in me, who opened doors, and now it's my turn to do the same for others. Michaela felt a dangerous hope rising inside her. She tried to push it down. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying come to Miami this weekend. Meet the team at Mission 44. See what we do. Then we'll talk about MIT and your future. And my water filter? Bring it. Mercedes has some of the best engineers in the world. I think they'd be very interested to see what you've built. Before Michaela could respond, the classroom doors burst open. Students poured into the hallway, the day's final bell ringing overhead. They stopped and stared at the unexpected sight of Lewis Hamilton standing there. Phones came out. Whispers spread. Lewis seemed unbothered by the attention. So, Miami? This weekend? Michaela thought of her mom, of the deposit deadline, of everything that could go wrong. But she also thought of everything that could go right. Yes, she said finally. We'll come to Miami. Lewis smiled, that same confident smile he showed after winning a race. Good choice. I think it's going to change your life. What Michaela didn't know yet was just how right he would be. What Michaela didn't know yet was just how right he would be. The next 24 hours passed in a blur. Tanya couldn't get out of her weekend shifts. They needed the money more than ever. But after a tearful phone call with Lewis himself, she agreed to let Mr. Rodriguez chaperone Michaela and Dion to Miami. You call me every few hours, Tanya insisted, as she hugged her children goodbye early Saturday morning. And be polite, and thank Mr. Hamilton properly. Mom, we will, Michaela promised. Dion was too excited to speak, clutching his backpack with Lewis's autograph safely inside. A sleek black SUV delivered them to a private airfield where a small jet waited. Mission 44 was painted on its side in silver letters. A smiling woman in a crisp suit greeted them at the stairs. I'm Angela, Executive Director of Mission 44, she said, shaking their hands. Lewis is already in Miami preparing for the race, but he's excited you're coming. Michaela had never flown before, let alone on a private jet. Inside, the cabin had plush leather seats, glossy wood tables, and a refrigerator stocked with snacks and drinks. Dion bounced from window to window, taking pictures with his phone. Is this real life? He kept asking, making Mr. Rodriguez laugh. 3 hours later, they landed in Miami. Another SUV whisked them to a luxury hotel overlooking the ocean, where they each had their own rooms. On Michaela's bed lay 3 passes on lanyards labeled VIP Paddock Access and Mercedes team shirts with their names printed on the back. A note from Lewis read, See you at the track. Wear these so my team knows you're with me. LH, the Miami International Autodrome, buzzed with excitement. Stands filled with thousands of fans wearing team colors. Music pounded from speakers, and the smell of tires, fuel, and expensive food filled the air. Their passes granted them access to areas most fans couldn't enter. Security guards nodded respectfully as they approached the Mercedes garage. Inside, mechanics in matching uniforms worked on 2 gleaming silver race cars. There he is, Dion whispered loudly, pointing. Lewis stood at the back of the garage, wearing his racing suit with the top half tied around his waist, talking with a group of engineers. He spotted them and waved them over. "You made it," he said, giving each of them a friendly handshake. "Welcome to my office." He introduced them to his team, using their full names and mentioning Michaela's National Science Fair win. The engineers nodded respectfully. "Michaela, I mentioned your water filter to our head engineer, Sean," Lewis said. "He'd love to hear more about it." A tall man with gray hair and kind eyes stepped forward. "Lewis tells me you've developed a low-cost lead filtration system. I'd be interested to see your design specs." Michaela had brought her notebook with all her technical drawings. Soon, she was deep in conversation with Sean and two other engineers, discussing flow rates and filtration materials. To her surprise, they treated her like a colleague, not a high school student. They asked challenging questions and nodded thoughtfully at her answers. Meanwhile, Lewis showed Dion and Mr. Rodriguez around the garage, explaining how the cars worked. Dion's eyes were wide as Lewis let him touch the steering wheel of his spare car. "This is the best day of my life," Dion whispered. The qualifying session was about to begin. Lewis had to prepare, so his assistant showed them to a special viewing area in the Mercedes garage. They watched as Lewis climbed into his car, put on his helmet, and drove out onto the track. The next hour was a blur of roaring engines and cheering crowds. Lewis qualified in second position, missing pole by just 0.2 of a second. When he returned to the garage, he was sweating but smiling. "Not bad. We've got a good chance tomorrow." Before heading to team debriefs, Lewis did something unexpected. During the drivers' parade, when all 20 Formula One drivers circled the track on the back of vintage convertibles, waving to fans, Lewis brought Michaela up on stage. "This is Michaela Jenkins," he told the crowd through the microphone. "National Science Fair champion and inventor of a water filtration system that could help communities around the world. Remember her name. You'll be hearing it again." The crowd cheered, not entirely sure what was happening but excited because Lewis was excited. Michaela blushed deeply but managed a small wave before escaping back to Mr. Rodriguez and Dion. That evening, Lewis invited them to dinner at their hotel's rooftop restaurant. As they ate, he explained more about Mission 44. "We've supported over 200 students so far," he said. "Scholarships, mentoring, internships. But we're just getting started." He turned to Michaela. "I've discussed your situation with our board. Mission 44 would like to offer you a full scholarship to MIT. Michaela's fork clattered against her plate. "Full? Tuition, housing, books, living expenses, everything? Plus summer internships at Mercedes F1's engineering department?" Dion gasped. Mr. Rodriguez placed a steadying hand on Michaela's shoulder. "There's no catch," Lewis continued. "We just ask that you maintain good academic standing and continue developing your water filter project with mentorship from our engineers." Michaela couldn't speak. Tears filled her eyes. "Is that a yes?" Lewis asked gently. She nodded, finally finding her voice. "Yes, thank you. I don't know what else to say." Lewis smiled. "You don't need to say anything. Just go to MIT and change the world. That's all the thanks we need." Lewis smiled. "You don't need to say anything. Just go to MIT and change the world. That's all the thanks we need." Back in their hotel room that night, Michaela couldn't sleep. She sat on the balcony overlooking Miami Beach, watching moonlight shimmer on the ocean. Everything had changed in just 2 days. The impossible had become possible. She called her mom, who cried when Michaela shared the news about the scholarship. "Chattatien, told you we'd figure it out," Tanya said through tears. "I knew something would happen for you." "It doesn't feel real," Michaela admitted. "Like I'm going to wake up and be back in Chicago with the MIT deadline passed." It's real, baby. You deserve this. Sunday morning came quickly. They returned to the track for the race, watching from the Mercedes garage as Lewis battled for the lead. When he finally crossed the finish line in first place, they cheered along with the team. In the celebration afterward, Lewis made sure Michaela, Dion, and Mr. Rodriguez were included in the team photos. "First place for me, MIT for you," Lewis told Michaela, still wearing his champagne-soaked race suit. "Not a bad weekend, I'd say." On the flight back to Chicago that evening, Angela from Mission 44 explained the next steps. "We'll handle the deposit immediately," she said, reviewing documents on her tablet. "Our lawyers will finalize the scholarship agreement this week. All your mother needs to do is sign these consent forms." Mr. Rodriguez looked over the paperwork carefully. "This all seems proper and straightforward. Very generous." "We believe in Michaela," Angela said simply. "Lewis sees something special in her project and her potential." Dion had fallen asleep, exhausted from the excitement. Michaela stared out the jet window as Chicago's lights appeared below. "What if I can't live up to all this?" she asked quietly. "What if I fail?" Angela's expression softened. "That's not how we see it. This isn't about guaranteed success. It's about having the opportunity to try." When they landed, Tanya was waiting at the private airfield, having come straight from her shift. She hugged her children tightly. "Thank you," she said to Angela and Mr. Rodriguez. "I don't have words for what this means to our family." Monday morning felt strange, returning to normal life after such an extraordinary weekend. At school, Michaela faced a barrage of questions from classmates who had seen social media posts about her at the race. "Are you dating Lewis Hamilton?" one girl asked. "Did he really give you $1 million?" asked another. Michaela shook her head. "It's not like that. His foundation is helping with college, that's all." But rumors spread quickly. By lunchtime, exaggerated stories circulated about Michaela's weekend. Some were funny, that she had designed Lewis's race car. Others were meaner, suggesting she had manipulated her way into his charity. Zoe defended her fiercely. "You're all just jealous. Michaela earned this with her brain, not whatever you're all implying." After school, a Mission 44 representative named James met with Michaela and Tanya at their apartment. He brought official paperwork for the scholarship and explained every detail. "We'll cover all expenses," he confirmed. "And we've arranged for Lewis's team engineers to mentor Michaela virtually on developing her water filter further." Tanya asked careful questions about obligations and commitments. James was patient, explaining everything clearly. "The only requirements are maintaining good academic standing and continuing work on the water filter project." As they reviewed the final documents, Tanya's phone buzzed. It was a text from a coworker. "Have you seen the Tribune?" 10 minutes later, Tanya had pulled up the Chicago Tribune website on their old laptop. A headline in the local section read, "Southside Teens Scholarship Raises Questions About Celebrity Motives." They read the article in stunned silence. It suggested Lewis Hamilton's foundation was using Michaela for publicity, questioning why this particular student had been selected when thousands of equally deserving Chicago students struggle to afford college. The article implied the whole thing was a PR stunt to improve Lewis's image. "This is garbage," Tanya said angrily. "They didn't even contact us for comment." James looked troubled. "I'm sorry about this. Unfortunately, it happens. People question motives when celebrities get involved in philanthropy. Should we be worried?" Michaela asked. "No," James assured her. "Mission 44 has helped hundreds of students. This is normal work for us, not a publicity stunt." But later that night, Michaela couldn't help checking social media. The article had sparked debate online. Most comments were supportive, but some were hurtful. Rich people just using poor kids to look good. Bet there's something sketchy about this whole deal. She must have connections. No way this was random. Doubt crept into Michaela's mind. Was this all too good to be true? Why had Lewis really picked her? She closed her laptop, trying to shake off the negative thoughts. The next morning, good news arrived. MIT had received and confirmed her deposit. It was official. She would be attending in the fall. Mr. Rodriguez brought cupcakes to celebrate with her after class. "Don't let that article bother you," he advised. "I've researched Mission 44. They do legitimate work. This isn't about publicity." Michaela nodded, but the seed of doubt had taken root. "I just don't understand why me, specifically. There are other National Science Fair winners who need money. Your water filter project addresses a real problem, affecting underserved communities," Mr. Rodriguez reminded her. "That aligns perfectly with Lewis's foundation goals." "I guess so," Michaela said, not entirely convinced. That evening, she worked on new sketches for her filter design, trying to focus on the future rather than the doubts. Her phone pinged with a message from Sean, the Mercedes engineer she'd met in Miami, offering feedback on her latest ideas. His genuine interest in her work reassured her. 3 days after the Tribune article, everything seemed to be settling down. The MIT admissions office had sent her official welcome materials. Tanya had taken the day off to celebrate, and they were planning a special dinner. Then Michaela received an email that made her stomach drop. Subject: Complication with scholarship, it read. Please contact the Mission 44 office as soon as possible regarding an urgent matter. She tried calling the number in the email, but got voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Lewis was preparing for the Monaco Grand Prix and unreachable. Angela didn't respond to messages. James's phone went straight to voicemail. The fear that had been lurking at the edges of Michaela's mind now took center stage. It had all been too good to be true after all. The fear that had been lurking at the edges of Michaela's mind now took center stage. It had all been too good to be true after all. She didn't tell her mom about the email. Tanya had already taken a rare day off work to celebrate. Why ruin it with what might be nothing? But as evening approached with still no response from Mission 44, Michaela's anxiety grew. "You're quiet tonight," Tanya observed as they washed dishes after their celebration dinner. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," Michaela lied. Excited, but tired. That night, she couldn't sleep. She checked her email every few minutes, hoping for an update. Nothing. She searched online for news about Mission 44 or Lewis Hamilton that might explain the complication, but found nothing unusual. By morning, Michaela had decided to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. While Tanya was in the shower, she quietly retrieved the Chicago Community College application from her desk drawer. She had kept it as a backup, though she'd never submitted it. Now she completed the remaining sections, her hand trembling slightly as she filled in her personal information. At school, she avoided questions about MIT. When her physics teacher, Mrs. Chen, asked about her fall plans, Michaela gave a vague answer about still finalizing details. The look of confusion on Mrs. Chen's face made Michaela's stomach twist. Everyone already knew about her scholarship. During lunch, she slipped away to the quiet corner of the library to check her email again. Nothing from Mission 44. The MIT deposit deadline was now just 3 days away. If the scholarship fell through, she'd miss her chance entirely. Zoe found her hiding spot. "What's going on? You're acting weird today." After swearing Zoe to secrecy, Michaela showed her the cryptic email. "That's super vague," Zoe said, frowning. Maybe it's just some paperwork thing? Maybe, Michaela agreed, not convinced. But why can't I reach anyone to find out? Lewis Hamilton is like one of the most famous athletes in the world. He's probably crazy busy with that Monaco race coming up. I'm not trying to reach Lewis himself, just anyone from the foundation. Michaela closed her laptop. I'm going to talk to Mr. Rodriguez. Maybe he has contacts from the trip. After school, she found Mr. Rodriguez grading papers in his classroom. I've been trying to reach you, he said when she walked in. I got a strange email from Mission 44 yesterday about a complication. Have you heard anything? Michaela's heart sank. You got it too? I've been trying to reach them, but no one's answering. Mr. Rodriguez frowned. That's concerning. Let me try my contacts. He made several calls while Michaela waited, her hope fading with each unsuccessful attempt. Finally, he set down his phone with a sigh. Something's definitely going on. I can't reach James or Angela, and Lewis's team is in Monaco already. What do we do? Michaela asked, her voice small. Keep trying. And in the meantime, he hesitated. In the meantime, I should plan for community college. Michaela finished for him. Mr. Rodriguez didn't argue, which told her everything she needed to know. Walking home, Michaela felt numb. She had allowed herself to believe in the impossible, and now reality was crashing back. The beautiful dream of MIT, of developing her filter with world-class engineers, of escaping the financial constraints that had defined her life, all fading away. At home, she found Dion watching Formula One coverage. Again, practice sessions for Monaco had started, and the TV showed beautiful shots of race cars winding through the narrow streets of the Mediterranean city. Look, Dion pointed excitedly. There's Lewis on the track. He's fastest so far. Michaela watched, silently, as the camera zoomed in on Lewis climbing out of his car, surrounded by engineers and press. He seemed a million miles away from Chicago, from her problems, from the scholarship that was apparently evaporating. I'm going to my room, she said, unable to watch anymore. But Lewis might mention you again in his interview. He won't, Michaela said, more sharply than she intended. In her room, she pulled out her MIT acceptance letter, running her fingers over the embossed logo. Then she set it aside and picked up the community college application instead. She would drop it off tomorrow, just to be safe. That night at dinner, she finally broke down and told her mom about the email. Why didn't you say something sooner? Tanya asked, immediately concerned. I didn't want to worry you, and I thought they'd get back to me quickly. Tanya immediately started making calls, but had no more luck than Michaela or Mr. Rodriguez. As the evening wore on, her mother's determined expression gradually gave way to resigned understanding. We've faced disappointments before, Tanya said, hugging Michaela tightly. We'll get through this one too. 2 days before the deposit deadline, with still no clarification from Mission 44, Michaela made her decision. She would formally accept the spot at Chicago Community College. It wasn't MIT, but it was a path forward. She was filling out the final forms when Mr. Rodriguez called. Michaela, I've been making calls all day. I finally reached someone who knows someone at Mercedes F1. There is an issue with the scholarship, but they wouldn't give details. They just said, a representative will be visiting tomorrow to explain everything in person. Tomorrow? Michaela's voice cracked. The deposit deadline is the day after. I know. I told them that. They promised it would all be resolved before the deadline. After hanging up, Michaela stared at the community college application, now nearly complete. Part of her wanted to submit it anyway, to protect herself from further disappointment, but another part still clung to hope. She set the application aside. not quite ready to give up on her dream. Not yet. But as she went to bed that night, the countdown to the deadline ticked loudly in her mind, each hour bringing her closer to a future she couldn't predict. She set the application aside, not quite ready to give up on her dream. Not yet. But as she went to bed that night, the countdown to the deadline ticked loudly in her mind, each hour bringing her closer to a future she couldn't predict. The next morning, one day before the MIT deposit deadline, Michaela went through her usual routine in a daze. She showered, dressed, and ate breakfast without really tasting it. Tanya had called in sick to her breakfast shift, insisting on being present for the meeting with the Mission 44 representative. "Whatever happens, we face it together," Tanya said, squeezing Michaela's hand across the kitchen table. They had arranged to meet at their apartment after Michaela's classes. Mr. Rodriguez would join them, having also taken the afternoon off. As Michaela walked to school, every step felt heavy. She had barely slept, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The school day crawled by. In chemistry, Michaela stared at the periodic table without really seeing it. During lunch, she sat, alone, not in the mood for conversation. Her phone remained silent. No updates, no explanations. When the final bell rang, Michaela rushed home, her heart pounding. As she approached their apartment building, she saw an unfamiliar black car parked outside. A man in a suit stood beside it, checking his watch. "Michaela Jenkins?" he asked as she approached. She nodded cautiously. "I'm James Thompson from Mission 44. We spoke in Miami, if you recall." Michaela remembered him, the foundation representative who had explained the scholarship details. He seemed more serious today, his smile tight. "My mom's waiting upstairs," Michaela said, "and my teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, should be here soon." James nodded, following her up the worn stairwell to their third-floor apartment. Tanya opened the door before they could knock, her expression a mixture of hope and worry. "Please, come in," she said formally, as if speaking to an important visitor. She had cleaned the apartment thoroughly, Michaela noticed. The water stains on the ceiling seemed more obvious because of how spotless everything else was. They sat around the small kitchen table. James placed a leather portfolio on the surface, but didn't open it. A tense silence filled the room until a knock announced Mr. Rodriguez's arrival. Once they were all seated with cups of coffee that no one was drinking, James cleared his throat. "First, I want to apologize for the lack of communication. This situation required careful handling, and we needed to gather all the facts before speaking with you." "What situation?" Tanya asked directly. "What's the complication with Michaela's scholarship?" James adjusted his tie. "Let me be clear. The scholarship itself is not in jeopardy. Lewis and Mission 44 remain fully committed to supporting Michaela's education." Michaela felt a wave of relief, quickly followed by confusion. "Then what's the problem?" "During our standard due diligence process, we encountered an issue that required investigation." James finally opened his portfolio and removed some documents. Not with Michaela, but with the National Science Fair organization itself. This was not what any of them had expected. Tanya and Michaela exchanged puzzled glances. "What kind of issue?" Mr. Rodriguez asked. 3 years ago, a former board member of the National Science Fair was involved in a financial scandal. He was removed from the board, but there were questions about the legitimacy of some awards during his tenure. "But that was 3 years ago," Michaela said. "What does that have to do with my scholarship now?" "Nothing directly," James assured her. "But, as a registered charity, Mission 44 must verify that all recipients and associated organizations meet certain ethical standards. We had to confirm that the current National Science Fair competition was legitimately judged and that your win was based entirely on merit. Tanya's expression hardened. Are you suggesting my daughter didn't deserve her award? Not at all, James said quickly. In fact, our investigation confirmed exactly the opposite. We interviewed judges, reviewed scoring sheets, and examined your project documentation. Everything was above board. Your win was well-deserved, Michaela. Mr. Rodriguez leaned forward. So, what was the complication? The process took longer than expected. We needed signatures and statements from current board members, many of whom were traveling. And frankly, Lewis insisted on thoroughness. He didn't want there to be any question about Michaela's accomplishments. Michaela felt lightheaded with relief. So the scholarship is still happening? For real? James smiled, the first genuine smile since he'd arrived. Absolutely. That's why I'm here. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. These are the final documents confirming your full scholarship to MIT, starting this fall. All expenses covered, as promised. Tanya began to cry silently, tears of relief sliding down her cheeks. Mr. Rodriguez patted her shoulder gently. I'm so sorry for the stress this caused, James continued. We should have communicated better. Lewis wanted me to personally express his apologies as well. He's been monitoring the situation from Monaco. As Michaela flipped through the scholarship, documents, all official, all real, she felt the weight of uncertainty finally lifting. But something in her mother's expression caught her attention. Despite the good news, Tanya still looked worried. Mom? What's wrong? Michaela asked. Tanya wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. Nothing's wrong. This is wonderful news. But Michaela knew her mother too well. There's something else, isn't there? Tanya and Mr. Rodriguez exchanged a glance, some unspoken communication passing between them. I was going to wait until after this meeting, Tanya said softly. I didn't want to add more stress. Wait for what? Michaela's anxiety returned. What's happening? Tanya took a deep breath. The building's been sold, Michaela. We got official notice yesterday. All tenants have to move out within 60 days. The news hit Michaela like a physical blow. Move out? To where? I've been looking at apartments, but rents have gone up everywhere in the neighborhood. The cheapest options are in Detroit, near your Aunt Regina. Detroit? Michaela's voice rose. But that's hundreds of miles from MIT. Tanya nodded, her expression pained. I know, baby. If you go to Massachusetts for college, Dion and I might have to move to Detroit. I can't afford Chicago on my own. Not anymore. James watched this exchange with growing concern, but remained silent, recognizing this as a family matter. Mr. Rodriguez cleared his throat. We'll figure something out, Michaela. The important thing is that your scholarship is secure. But as Michaela stared at the MIT documents in front of her, her victory suddenly felt hollow. How could she celebrate going to her dream school if it meant leaving her family behind, scattered across different states? The choice that had seemed so clear now felt impossible. Her education or her family? Her future or her home? The choice that had seemed so clear now felt impossible. Her education or her family? Her future or her home? That evening, after James and Mr. Rodriguez had left, Michaela sat with her mother at the kitchen table. Dayon was at a friend's house for dinner, giving them space to talk. I won't go, Michaela said firmly. I'll defer for a year, or transfer to a school in Detroit after community college here. Tanya shook her head. Absolutely not. This scholarship is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But you and Dion, Will be fine, Tanya insisted. Your aunt has that spare room. Dion can enroll in school there. I already called about waitressing jobs. Michaela stared at the scholarship papers, feeling torn in half. Everything she dreamed of was right in front of her, MIT, the chance to develop her water filter, a future without financial barriers. But at what cost? Dion needs stability, she argued. He's just starting middle school. And you shouldn't have to leave Chicago, your friends. Everything familiar. We've moved before, Tanya reminded her. When your father left, we had to start over. We survived then. We'll survive now. Michaela winced at the mention of her father, who had walked out when Dion was just 2. She barely remembered him, but she remembered the aftermath. Her mother working 3 jobs, the downsizing to smaller and smaller apartments, the struggle to keep food on the table. This is different, Michaela insisted. I'm choosing to leave. For college, for your future. Tanya's voice rose with emotion. This is exactly what I've worked for all these years, to give you choices, opportunities. But not at the cost of breaking up our family. They went in circles until midnight, neither willing to budge. Michaela couldn't accept separating from her family. Tanya refused to let Michaela give up MIT. Finally, exhausted, they agreed to sleep on it. But as Michaela lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she knew what she had to do. Her mind was made up. In the morning, while her mom was in the shower, Michaela opened her laptop and composed an email to Mission 44. Her fingers trembled as she typed, "Dear Ms. Angela and the Mission 44 team, I am writing with the deepest gratitude for the generous scholarship opportunity you have offered me. The chance to attend MIT has been my dream for years. However, due to unforeseen family circumstances, I must respectfully decline the scholarship. My family is facing relocation, and I need to remain close to help my mother and younger brother through this transition. Please know this decision was incredibly difficult. I will never forget your kindness and belief in me. Sincerely, Michaela Jenkins." Her cursor hovered over the send button. Once sent, there would be no going back. She would be choosing family over opportunity, present security over future potential. Before she could click, her phone rang. "Mr. Rodriguez." "Michaela, I've been thinking about your situation all night," he said when she answered. "Before you make any decisions, I think you should talk to Lewis directly." "Lewis Hamilton? He's in Monaco. The race is tomorrow." "I know, but this is important. He should understand the full picture before the scholarship is finalized." "I was just about to email Mission 44 and decline," Michaela admitted. "Don't," Mr. Rodriguez said firmly. "Not yet. Let me send you a contact. It's a private messaging address Lewis gave me for emergencies during our Miami trip. Explain your situation to him first." After hanging up, Michaela stared at the contact information Mr. Rodriguez had sent. Would a Formula One champion preparing for one of the biggest races of the year really have time for her problems? It seemed unlikely. Still, she had nothing to lose. She closed the email draft and opened the messaging app instead. "Mr. Hamilton," she typed, "this is Michaela Jenkins. Mr. Rodriguez gave me this contact for emergencies. I hate to bother you before your race, but I'm facing a difficult decision about the scholarship." She explained the situation briefly. The building sale, her mother's potential move to Detroit, her reluctance to separate their family. She ended with, "I'm considering declining the scholarship to stay with my family. I wanted you to know why. Thank you for everything, regardless of what happens next." She sent the message, not expecting a response anytime soon. Lewis would be focused on race preparations, strategy meetings, media obligations. Her problems would have to wait. To her shock, A reply came within minutes. Michaela, don't make any decisions yet. Let me call you. What time works for you today? LH. She stared at her phone in disbelief. Lewis Hamilton wanted to call her? Today? Before she could respond, Dayon burst into her room without knocking. Kayla, you're on TV again! She followed him to the living room, where the small TV was showing a news segment. It was a Monaco Grand Prix preview, but the reporter was talking about Lewis Hamilton's special connection with a Chicago Science Fair champion. They showed a photo of Michaela on stage with Lewis during the Miami Drivers Parade. Lewis Hamilton has been quiet about his foundation's newest scholar, the reporter said, but sources close to the seven-time world champion say he's personally invested in the success of this young engineer's water filtration system. Michaela quickly responded to Lewis's message. I'm free anytime today. Thank you for being willing to talk. Within seconds, her phone rang, an international number. Her heart pounding, she answered. Hello? Michaela, it's Lewis. His voice sounded distant but clear. I just read your message. Tell me everything that's happening. For the next 10 minutes, she explained the full situation. The building sale, the rising rents in Chicago, her mom's limited options, her fears about family separation. Lewis listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. You know, I've never told this to the media, he finally said. But when I was 12, my parents separated. I moved in with my father to pursue racing, while my mother and half-siblings stayed behind. It was the hardest part of my journey. Not the racing, not the prejudice I faced, but being separated from half my family. Michaela hadn't known this about Lewis. It wasn't in any of the articles or videos Dayon had shown her. So you understand why I'm hesitating, she said. I do, Lewis replied. But I also understand something else. You don't have to choose. What do you mean? Don't send that email, Lewis said firmly. I think I have a solution. Don't send that email, Lewis said firmly. I think I have a solution. Michaela gripped her phone tighter. What kind of solution? Mission 44 doesn't just provide scholarships, Lewis explained. We have a housing assistance program for families of scholarship recipients. We haven't mentioned it yet because it's usually for situations exactly like yours. Housing assistance? Michaela repeated, barely daring to hope. We can help your mother and brother relocate to affordable housing near Cambridge. The foundation has partnerships with housing agencies in several university cities, including Boston. Michaela sank onto her bed, legs suddenly weak. You mean my mom and Dayon could move with me to Massachusetts? Exactly. They'd be close enough for you to see them regularly, not hundreds of miles away in Detroit. It seemed too perfect. But what about my mom's job? She's worked at the same diner for 6 years. Lewis paused, and she could hear voices in the background. Probably race, engineers or team members. Sorry about the noise. I'm at the track for practice. I shouldn't be taking your time before a race. This is important, Lewis cut in. About your mom's job, I've been thinking. Mission 44 is actually expanding. We're opening a new office in Boston this fall to support students in the New England area. Okay. Michaela wasn't sure where he was going with this. We'll need a community outreach coordinator. Someone who understands the challenges families face. Someone compassionate, hardworking, with real-life experience. Are you saying? I'm saying we should talk to your mom about applying for the position. The salary would be better than waitressing, with benefits and regular hours. Michaela couldn't speak. She was suddenly crying, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Michaela? Are you still there? Yes, she managed. This is too much. Why would you do all this for us? There was a pause, and when Lewis spoke again, His voice was softer. "Remember what I told you at your school? About seeing something in you that reminded me of myself?" "Yes, I meant it. But it's more than that. Your water filter design. It's not just a science fair project. It has real potential to help communities. Like Flint, like parts of Chicago, like areas around the world where clean water is a luxury." Another pause. "Angela from Mission 44 is calling your mother right now to explain all this. And I've asked James to visit again tomorrow with the housing program details." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll go to MIT and keep working on that filter," Lewis replied. "That's all the thanks I need." After they hung up, Michaela sat frozen on her bed, trying to process everything. A minute later, she heard her mother cry out from the living room. She rushed in to find Tanya clutching her phone, tears streaming down her face. "Mom? What's wrong?" "That was Angela from Mission 44, Tanya said, her voice shaking. She said they want to help us relocate to Boston, and they want me to interview for a job at their new office." "Lewis just told me," Michaela said, hugging her mother. "He called from Monaco. Is this real? Is this really happening?" Before Michaela could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Michaela, it's Darius Williams from Channel 8 News. I'd love to do a follow-up story on your scholarship and MIT plans. Are you available for an interview tomorrow?" Michaela stared at the message, then looked at her mother. Tanya had stopped crying and was now on her laptop, looking at apartment listings in Cambridge with a dazed expression. "Mom, the reporter who did the original story wants to interview me again. About going to MIT?" Tanya looked up and smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "You should do it. Let people see what's possible when someone believes in you." As promised, James visited again the next day with detailed information about Mission 44's housing program. He showed them photos of available apartments near Cambridge, small but clean, in safe neighborhoods, with good schools for day on. The rent would be subsidized for the first 2 years, giving Tanya time to establish herself at the new job. "We typically help 3 to 5 families relocate each year," James explained. "It's a core part of our mission, supporting the whole family, not just the scholarship recipient." Darius Williams arrived that afternoon for the interview. When Michaela mentioned the housing assistance and potential job for her mother, Darius's eyes widened. "This is an incredible story," he said. "Would you mind if we included Lewis Hamilton on a video call during the segment? My producer has already reached out to his team." Hours later, Michaela found herself sitting in her living room with camera lights and microphones set up. A laptop on the coffee table showed Lewis Hamilton on a video call from Monaco, dressed in his racing suit, the Mediterranean Sea visible through a window behind him. "Lewis, you're joining us just hours before the Monaco Grand Prix," Darius said for the camera. "Why is Michaela's story so important to you that you'd make time during one of the biggest race weekends of the year?" Lewis smiled. "Because some things are bigger than racing. What Michaela has accomplished, what she will accomplish, will impact lives for generations. When I started Mission 44, this is exactly the kind of situation we wanted to address, removing barriers for brilliant young minds from underrepresented communities." The interview continued, with Michaela explaining her water filter project and her plans at MIT. When Darius asked about the housing program, Lewis explained it as if it were completely routine, not a special arrangement for Michaela's family. "We believe education is a family journey," Lewis said. "Supporting the whole family is just good sense if we want students to succeed." As they wrapped up, Darius asked one final question. "Michaela, what would you say to other young people facing similar barriers to their dreams?" Michaela thought for a moment. "I'd say that hard work matters. My filter took 27 versions before it worked right. But I'd also say it's okay to accept help. Sometimes you need someone to believe in you before you can cross the finish line." Lewis nodded approvingly. "Couldn't have said it better myself." After the cameras were gone, life moved quickly. The MIT deposit deadline passed with Michaela officially enrolled for the fall semester. Lewis won the Monaco Grand Prix, dedicating the victory to all the young people fighting to overcome barriers. Tanya interviewed for the Mission 44 position and was offered the job on the spot. Moving day came in July. Their few belongings fit into a small moving truck headed for Cambridge. Mr. Rodriguez helped them pack and promised to visit at Thanksgiving. Zoe cried when they said goodbye, but made Michaela promise to text every day. Their new apartment was on the second floor of a well-maintained building, with Tanya and Dion having one bedroom and Michaela another. It was still small, but larger than their Chicago apartment, with no water stains on the ceiling. Dion's new school was just 2 blocks away, and Tanya's office only a short bus ride from there. MIT was everything Michaela had dreamed of. Her first day on campus, she stood beneath the Great Dome, barely believing she was really there. Her engineering professors were immediately impressed with her water filter design, connecting her with researchers working on similar projects. As T.B. promised, she spent the following summer interning at Mercedes F1's engineering headquarters in the UK. Under Sean's mentorship, she refined her filter design, improving its efficiency and durability. Lewis visited whenever his racing schedule allowed, always asking detailed questions about her progress. By her sophomore year at MIT, Michaela's improved filter had been tested in 3 pilot communities with contaminated water supplies. The results were promising: 99.1% lead removal at a production cost of just $8 per unit. During winter break that year, Lewis invited Michaela and her family to attend the Formula One season finale in Abu Dhabi as his personal guests. After securing his 8th World Championship, he introduced Michaela to government officials interested in implementing her water filtration system in developing countries. "This is just the beginning," Lewis told her at the celebration dinner. "Your work is going to change lives around the world." On the flight home, Dion, now a lanky 14-year-old with dreams of becoming an engineer like his sister, asked the question that had been on Michaela's mind for a long time. Why did Lewis really help us? Out of all the smart kids out there, why you specifically? Michaela smiled. He saw something in my filter design that reminded him of himself, I guess. Just because of a science fair project, Dion pressed. It was a pretty good project. Michaela laughed. What she didn't know then, what no one would discover until years later, was that the real reason Lewis Hamilton had acted so quickly wasn't just charity or seeing himself reflected in a determined young scientist. Her water filter design contained an engineering principle that would eventually revolutionize not just water purification, but also a critical component in hydrogen fuel cells, technology that would later power the most advanced and environmentally friendly Formula One cars. Lewis Hamilton, always thinking 3 steps ahead both on and off the track, had recognized the potential in Michaela's design that even she hadn't fully understood at the time. His investment in her future wasn't just philanthropy, it was vision. But that revelation would come later. For now, Michaela Jenkins, once a girl from Chicago's South Side who couldn't afford college, was creating ripples that would soon become waves of change across the world. All because someone believed she deserved the chance to cross her own finish line. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story about determination, opportunity, and kindness, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content like this. Don't forget to share with friends and family who might need some hope or inspiration today. Every share helps spread awareness about the barriers many talented young people face, and the difference we can all make when we choose to help others cross their finish line. Until next time!